Welcome! In this presentation, I introduce three foundational pillars of career counseling theory: the trait factor tradition, the person-environment fit perspective, and Holland's RIASEC model. These frameworks have shaped career counseling practice for over a century, and you will encounter them in virtually every assessment tool you use throughout this program. Let's get started. At the heart of every career theory in this unit are two deceptively simple questions. What kind of person are you, and what kind of work fits? These questions were first posed systematically at the turn of the 20th century, and they remain the backbone of career assessment today. When we ask clients about their strengths, interests, and values, we are asking the first question. When we explore job demands, workplace culture, and what an occupation offers, we are asking the second. The framework you are about to learn gives both questions a shared structure, a way to answer them together and reason toward fit. As you study these theories, keep in mind that they carry important assumptions about freedom of choice and access to opportunity. We will name those assumptions explicitly as we go. Before we begin, let me anchor this presentation to its learning objective. By the end of this session, you should be able to apply trait factor and person-environment theories, including Holland's RIASEC typology, to conceptualize a client's career concerns in a counseling context. This connects directly to CACREP Standard 3.1, which requires knowledge of major career development theories and their application across diverse client populations across the lifespan. Notice that the Bloom's taxonomy level here is applied. The goal is active use of these frameworks when you are sitting across from a client, not just recognition or recall. You will also notice a direct connection to your wayfinding log this week, which is a first-person method of gathering the kind of data these theories are built to interpret. This presentation is organized around four interconnected ideas. We start with the historical roots of the trait factor tradition, beginning with Frank Parsons' 1909 framework. From there, we move to the theory of work adjustment, developed by Dawes and Lofquist, which reframes fit as an ongoing, two-way negotiation rather than a one-time event. The third section covers Holland's RIASEC model in depth, and this is the conceptual center of the presentation. And we close by discussing how to use these tools responsibly in practice, including an honest look at their limitations. Each section builds on the one before it, so even if Holland's model is already familiar to you, I encourage you to follow the thread from the beginning. The story begins in Boston in 1909 with a social reformer named Frank Parsons. Working with young men from working class and immigrant communities, Parsons published Choosing a Vocation, outlining a three-step process: know yourself, know the world of work, and reason together toward a good fit between the two. His framework was genuinely progressive for its time. It treated vocational choice as a rational, dignified process rather than something that simply happened to people based on their class or circumstances, and it placed the counselor in the role of a collaborative partner in that reasoning process. As you read Parsons, notice what his model assumes: that the chooser has meaningful freedom and that the doors of opportunity are open. We will examine that assumption more critically in Presentation 3. What Parsons established was the central proposition of the entire trait factor tradition. When a person's traits correspond to the demands and rewards of an occupational environment, satisfaction and stability tend to follow. The left side of this equation is the individual, their traits, interests, values, and abilities, made visible through self-assessment and reflection. The right side is the environment, what a job requires of workers, and what it offers them in return. This single idea sits beneath nearly every standardized career inventory you will ever administer: the strong interest inventory, the self-directed search, the one-at-interest profiler. When a client completes one of these instruments, they are mapping their left side profile. The counselor's job is to help them understand how that profile corresponds to environments on the right. Keep in mind that this relationship is a tendency, not a guarantee. Other factors always matter, and we will name those as we go. The theory of work adjustment, developed by Renee Dawes and Lloyd Lofquist at the University of Minnesota, takes the matching logic a step further and makes it dynamic. Rather than a one-time match made at the point of hire, TWA frames fit as a two-way, ongoing negotiation between person and environment. On the person side, there are two key dimensions: needs, what the individual requires from work to feel satisfied, such as autonomy, achievement, or social connection, and abilities, the skills and competencies they bring to the role. On the environment side are the reinforcers the environment offers, such as compensation, recognition, and variety, and the ability requirements the employer places on the worker. The degree of match across both dimensions is called correspondence, and TWA evaluates it from both sides simultaneously. Satisfaction reflects the person's view of the fit. Satisfactoriness reflects the employer's view. This makes TWA especially useful when working with clients navigating career dissatisfaction or major work transitions. With Holland, we arrive at the most widely used single framework in career counseling practice. Holland's core proposition was elegantly simple. People and work environments both come in types, and people seek out environments that match their type. What makes this powerful is that Holland applied the same 6-category structure to both people and environments, enabling evaluation of fit by comparing a person's type with the types assigned to occupations. Those 6 types, the RIASEC model, appear throughout your professional toolkit in OneNet occupational profiles, the self-directed search, and the strong interest inventory, which you will encounter in week 5. Holland's model was refined over decades based on extensive empirical work, but its core insight has proven remarkably durable. Holland organized the 6 types into a hexagon, and the geometry is not decorative. It carries theoretical meaning. Types that sit adjacent to each other are more similar in interests and values than types that sit across from each other. Realistic and investigative share common ground. Realistic and social, which sit on opposite sides, share very little. A 3-letter Holland code represents a person's top 3 types, listed in order of prominence. That code is used to search OneNet, to interpret interest inventory results, and to structure career counseling conversations about fit. One important point: almost no one is a pure single-letter type. Most people have a spread across 2 or 3 types, and the shape of that spread, where the peaks are and how close they sit on the hexagon, tells you a great deal about the individual. Let's walk through the first 3 types: realistic, investigative, and artistic. People with a realistic orientation are drawn to things, tools, buildings, and the outdoors. They tend to prefer concrete, hands-on tasks over abstract reasoning or social facilitation. Occupational fits include the trades, engineering, agriculture, land and field work, and technical roles. The investigative type is drawn to ideas, analysis, and inquiry. Investigative individuals thrive on solving complex problems, typically preferring to work independently through systematic observation. Fits include science, research, medicine, diagnosis, and data analysis. The artistic type is drawn to expression and originality. Artistic individuals are comfortable with ambiguity and unstructured environments. They value aesthetics and creative autonomy. Fits include art, writing, design, performance, music, and film. The second group of 3 types is social, enterprising, and conventional. The social type is drawn to helping, teaching, and healing. Social individuals gain energy from interpersonal connection and find meaning in supporting others' growth and well-being. Fits include counseling, education, healthcare, social work, and ministry. If you are in this program, there is a good chance social is prominent in your own profile. The enterprising type is drawn to leading, persuading, and selling. Enterprising individuals are energized by influence, risk-taking, and achieving organizational or financial goals. Fits include management, law, sales, entrepreneurship, advocacy, and politics. Finally, the conventional type is drawn to organizing, ordering, and attention to detail. Conventional time-to-vigils value accuracy, predictability, and clearly defined procedures. Fits include accounting, administration, logistics, data management, and finance. Note that social sits at the center of the counseling profession, and it is a type we will return to when we meet Elena Skye later in this presentation. Beyond the 3-letter code itself, Holland's model offers 5 interrelated constructs that allow for a more nuanced reading of a client's profile. I want you to recognize them so you can say more than a list of letters when working with a client. The first is congruence: how well the person's type matches the environment's type. Higher congruence is associated with greater satisfaction and tenure, though the relationship is more modest than we might expect. The second is consistency. how closely a person's top two types sit on the hexagon. Adjacent types indicate a more internally consistent profile than opposite types. Third is differentiation, how clearly one or two types stand out from the rest. A highly differentiated profile has a clear peak. A flat profile has roughly equal strength across types, which may indicate someone still in active exploration. Fourth is identity, how clear and stable a person's sense of their own goals, interests, and talents is. This can shift significantly across development and major life transitions. And fifth is calculus, the principle that hexagonal distances allow counselors to quantify relationships between types systematically. Together, these five constructs provide a richer interpretive vocabulary for debriefing and interest inventory. At this point, I want to step briefly away from formal theory and connect to the experiential practice at the center of your work this week. Burnett and Evans in Designing Your Life offer a simple but important observation. Notice when you feel energy and flow, and when you feel drained. That lived, embodied experience is a first-person way to gather the same data that an interest inventory gathers from the outside. Interest inventories ask you to report what you like, dislike, or feel capable of doing. The wayfinding practice does the same thing experientially. You track your actual responses to activities as they unfold over several days. Patterns that emerge from that log often confirm what a formal assessment reveals, and sometimes complicate or enrich it in ways a standardized instrument cannot capture. This is why your wayfinding log is the experiential heart of this week's learning. I will walk through the specifics on slide 17. Now that you understand the model, let's talk about using it responsibly in practice. The power of RIASEC lies not in the code itself, but in how a skilled counselor uses it to open conversation, explore meaning, and expand possibility. 3 principles to carry with you. First, open options. Use RIASEC to widen a client's sense of what is possible. The code is a map with many destinations, not a single prescribed path. It can surface occupations the client may never have considered. Second, hold the code lightly. A 3-letter code starts a conversation. It is not a label to live inside. Scores shift over time, across contexts, and with new experiences. Treat results as hypotheses to explore, not conclusions to accept. Third, center the client's meaning. After sharing results, ask what they bring up, what fits, what feels off, what surprises you. The client's interpretation of the code is often more clinically useful than the code itself. Responsible practice means being honest about the limitations of Holland's model. It is enormously useful, and it carries real constraints. Hold both truths simultaneously. First, predictive power is modest. Congruence between person type and environment type does predict satisfaction, but only modestly. Relationships, compensation, sense of meaning, and workplace culture all shape how people experience their work, and none of these are fully captured by a 3-letter code. Second, the hexagon is an idealization. The neat geometric structure is a useful simplification, not a perfect empirical map. Real interest data rarely conform to the hexagon's proportions across all samples. Third, within type diversity is enormous. 2 people with the same Holland code may share very little beyond a surface-level category. The code does not determine identity. And fourth, cultural assumptions are embedded in every interest inventory. Its items, norms, and occupational lists reflect the context in which it was developed. Awareness of this is not a reason to avoid these tools. It is a reason to use them thoughtfully and critically. Let's bring these frameworks to life through a case that will recur across this unit. Elena Skye is a client who discovers during an interest inventory that her top Holland types are social and artistic, with notable investigative curiosity. Her reaction is telling, she laughs, because those are things she has been doing for free her whole life. Nobody ever called it a career. Reading Elena's profile through a Holland lens reveals something the code alone does not capture. Her social and artistic scores reflect a lifetime of visible competence in her community, teaching, creating, connecting, supporting. Her investigative curiosity points to a love of inquiry that formal schooling may never have had the opportunity to develop. The lesson for your practice. The work people already do for family, neighborhood, and community is rarely named as a career. Part of our work as counselors is to help clients name it, claim it, and build on it. Lead with Elena's strengths and relationships before any conversation about barriers or credentials. Let me close with a clear walkthrough of your assignment for this week. The Wayfinding Log is a 5-day experiential exercise. For 5 days, pay attention to moments when you feel absorbed, energized, or in flow, and equally to moments when you feel depleted or disengaged. Record both briefly each day. A sentence or two per moment is enough. After 5 days, review your entries and look for patterns. What kinds of activities, interactions, or contexts appear most often in your high-energy moments? What appears in the drained ones? Next, connect that pattern to one of the 6 RIASEC types. You are looking for a first hypothesis, not a final answer. Finally, bring your reflection to the discussion board in whatever format feels honest: a drawing, a playlist, a paragraph. There are no wrong formats. The goal is a genuine, first-person inquiry into your own vocational landscape. We have covered a great deal of ground in this presentation. You can now read a client's presenting concerns through the lens of interest and fit, drawing on 3 interconnected frameworks: Parsons's foundational trait factor logic, the theory of work adjustments to a correspondence model, and Holland's RIASEC typology. You can apply these tools to expand a client's sense of possibility, interpret an interest inventory with nuance, and hold a 3-letter code lightly enough to keep the client, rather than the instrument, at the center of the conversation. In the next presentation, we shift from what fits at a given moment to how a career unfolds over a lifetime, exploring Super's lifespan, life space theory, and Gottfredson's theory of circumscription and compromise. I look forward to continuing with you there. The references on this slide correspond to the readings and theoretical frameworks covered in this presentation. I encourage you to explore the primary source texts where possible, particularly Holland's Making Vocational Choices, Parsons's Choosing a Vocation, and the relevant chapter from Tang's Career Development and Counseling textbook. All references are formatted in APA 7th edition. If you have questions about any of these sources, please reach out through the course discussion forum or during office hours. Thank you for your time and attention.